Tampa Bay ranks in the top 10 cities for underage sex trafficking.
It's a very real and disturbing problem here in the Bay Area.
Child sex trafficking tonight.
Where they say they've found evidence of prostitution and human trafficking.
They're tattooing, branding children, and people are using them as consumable merchandise.
We throw around this term sex trafficking, which implies that sex is being trafficked as opposed to humans are trafficked within the sex industry. And I think it's important to focus on the language. Sex work is an umbrella term that refers to a range of erotic labor. So it falls into categories of legal and illegal. Legal sex work, sometimes the lines are blurred though. Legal sex work includes erotic dancing, pornography, phone sex operators. Illegal sex work includes prostitution, at least here in the United States, outside of some counties in Nevada. When I looked at street-based sex work, I was trying to get a better understanding of how the language that people use to talk about prostitution influences the conditions of people's lives. And the same happens with trafficking, in the sense that the way the laws get written, the way that people that have been trafficked in the sex industry, the way that they're talked about, it directly impacts the resources that they have, and it directly impacts the way that we understand these, the way I would view it as these problems and solutions surrounding sex work and trafficking in the sex industry.
So I think most people have no idea the prevalence of human sex trafficking that exists now, or they think it's only something that happens in other countries. But the biggest thing the media can do is awareness. You have this dominant submissive culture now where we've spent 2 generations trying to get society to really understand that no means no. You can use something like 50 Shades of Grey. Now you have this pop culture phenomenon that literally muddies that line as much as could be muddied.
We all know that exploitation happens. Now, where does the line get drawn into trafficking, right? Where it's against their will? That is a tricky, very complex conversation.
So I am the Director of Survivor Programming and Leadership for Sail of Freedom. And so what that means is I actually do all the programming for SAILA when it has to do with our survivors, because we run a residential home and a prevention program and jail outreach and street outreach. And so I always give that survivor eye and that survivor perspective to pretty much anything that Sail of Freedom does. And I have the honor and privilege of doing that because I am a survivor. I'm able to be here to share my experience of what it was like to be a survivor of over 14 years of incest, 4 years of sex trafficking by a serial sex offender dad that had about 300 victims, and he also happened to be my pimp. And the reason that I can sit in front of you is because there are great programs that are out. When this happened to me over 40 years ago, there was nothing, okay? There was no programs. But over the course of the last 10 years, we have now been able to have programs for women, for kids, a lot of therapeutic programs. We have come forward with PTSD, that survivors do have PTSD. And so being kind of in the movement, of all of this has provided me the services that I personally needed, do what I do as a spokesperson for survivors of incest and sexual violence and sex trafficking and domestic violence. Trafficking can happen anywhere. So let me just first say that. It's happening behind closed doors. It's happening places that you drive by every single day and you'll go, oh, that's a nail salon. There's no way anything could be happening in that. Oh, that's a tanning salon. Oh, there's no way there's anything happening in that. Oh, that's a place I can go have a massage. Clearly, I just saw really nice people walking in there. There's no way anything could be happening there. There's a Chinese buffet restaurant. It's like my favorite place. Really? Labor trafficking and sex trafficking could be happening there? It is happening everywhere around us. It's happening in your neighborhoods. The house right next door to you, you're like, there's no way I live in like a really nice neighborhood. Trust me, it's happening behind closed doors. And so those are the things we have to pay attention to things. We have to watch. I'll use a massage parlor for an example. Who's really getting a massage at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, right? I don't care if you are a person that you work all day long and you get off at midnight and you go, I'm gonna go have a massage. There's like some other time during your day you could go do that. When you go like to certain restaurants, you know, or nail salons, start checking it out and paying attention. You know, can anyone speak English to me? You know, when you go to the bathroom, is there a wall? And you can clearly see that there's something closed off behind there, and it's not because that's where they're keeping supplies. Will they not make eye contact with you? Like we're making eye contact. Eye contact is huge when someone, I mean, there are some cultures they don't, you know, but most cultures, especially when you come to the United States, you learn that eye contact, you know, is very important to make. But it is, just drive down the street, it's everywhere, because this is what we think, okay? We think that the only way trafficking or prostitution is happening is that there's the girl and boy, you know, on the street corner just like, hello, here I am. No, that's like so few and far between. Well, the biggest misconception is that it only happens to foreigners, that there is no way it is happening to our American girls and boys, men and women. That you have to literally come from another country, so you have to be brought in from another country to the United States, and that you are kidnapped, which is such a small percent, you know, but that's what we hear a lot about, and that you are then moved always from state to state, and that's just not true. But everyone thinks that you have to be moved, but it really, the big misconception is that it's all foreigners, and there's no one that's domestic, and there definitely are not any little white girls that it's happening to.
I've been working on the front line, working with women coming out of human trafficking, working on public speaking, training, law enforcement, state's attorney's office on signs to look for with human trafficking. So I specifically get to work with prostitutes, street level, online, selling themselves, strip clubs, underground saunas. And a lot of times people will say, oh, you know, they're working for themselves. And what I have found in my experience is no one's working for themselves. I've never met a woman who's making her own money. There's always someone else behind her that says to be helping her out. There's a lot of drugs, physical abuse, and so it's always tied heavily to trafficking. In my experience, every single prostitute I've ever worked with has been sexually abused, has had a trafficker at some point. I'm not going to say every prostitute has a trafficker, but I've never met one that doesn't. So number one question I get is, well, why don't they leave? You know, why don't they just walk away? So if you can imagine a domestic violent relationship, this is 10 times worse. And so this person has usually been sexually abused by the time they were 3 to 5 by someone they loved. And so their self-worth is just not there at all. And a lot of times when pimps, traffickers come in, they come in romantic. They come in as a lover. They come in and these girls fall in love, or these girls feel love they've never felt. So there's something, it's called Stockholm Syndrome, but it's a major trauma bond. And it keeps those girls there working either out of fear of they're going to get hurt, or someone they love is going to get hurt. They might have threatened a child or a close loved one. They're addicted to drugs, and as long as they do what they're supposed to do, they come back for the drugs. So I personally will go on the streets with law enforcement. We had a case where we were just stopping cars if they were speeding, or basically like a ride along with an undercover team. And when we stopped, they seemed a little nervous, the people in the car, and when they opened up the trunk, I noticed there were douche kits in the trunk, and I thought, well, that's not normal. And I saw lots of condoms, and so I thought, well, let's just split them up and start asking questions. And it ended up a man from Clearwater had flown 2 girls down from Ohio. They were both like 18, and he had just put their pictures on Backpage. And they didn't even know what Backpage was. When we got on Backpage, we showed them. They were actually on there, and they had no idea. And so that was a wake-up call for law enforcement that I had been working with, that we were onto something. So that led to, I've been able to work in saunas, which would be a place where they're advertising massages, but they're actually selling sex. so the police will bring me in case there's any women or children that need to talk to an advocate so that they can get help if they'd like it. If they're 18, they have a choice. And then also, we've just been able to work cases and build them stronger. So like we might see something that doesn't look like evidence, but with a lot of training, you start to see it is. For instance, they can use saran wrap for condoms. So if there's excess saran wrap, you might want to pay attention to that. You can use it in court, ledgers, video cameras. Marbles are used to count tricks, which would be how many people you sleep with that day. So there's just a lot of little things that with more knowledge and understanding, you could build your cases a lot stronger.
I supervise a violent crime squad, which was also in charge of looking at the child prostitution in the Tampa area. It was an initiative that was started in 2003 by Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Tampa was one of the first offices that started the task force. We worked closely with Hillsborough County and the Tampa Police Department initially. As the task force grew, it grew into Orange County, and we were absorbed other local agencies. When you have a large number of individuals, especially male-oriented individuals, you know, like I mentioned, some events, Super Bowl, Daytona, there's just numbers. So it attracts the child prostitution and prostitution per se. Come follow that. You have the numbers, you have the clients that want it, and they follow it. If you target drugs and gangs, you're gonna get numbers. You know, statistics for arrests, whether street level or major, every police department has it because, oh, we're fighting drugs, the public wants that. We're fighting drugs, we're getting the bums off the street, blah, 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 blah. Who wants to say we got a child prostitution problem? You know, not a lot. So that's why you're not gonna get a lot of those numbers. Again, it's something that nobody's proud to have in their backyard. It's something that nobody wants to raise their hand and says, hey, we're number one in this. Again, most of them, they come from bad homes. They're like what we call throwaway kids. And the few percentage that we saw that just did it for the money, that's a small percentage. I don't think you'll see something like this go down until other actions are taking place. You know, again, you have minors. Aside from the criminal aspect, you have homes that are broken. You have psychological issues. You have financial issues. You have some of these girls that are, live alone, or boys that live alone. So that's part of the problem. It's very difficult to get them back into society. A lot of them run away again and go back to do what they're doing. The volume of child out there doing this, you couldn't keep up. You really couldn't keep up.
I believe that the demand is coming from pornography. So we're talking by the time a child is age 5, they're subjected to pornography. Through school, through phones, through technology, through the internet, through their parents. And because of that, we're seeing a much stronger addiction to pornography. Our culture exploits women sexually in many ways. Predominantly, they're, since they're young, being shown, whether that's through Instagram, TV, music, to use their body, and using their body as power. And even now, women are starting to embrace that. And so you see from very small age now with selfies and everything else that little girls are starting to really embrace that and show themselves half naked or naked to the world. We've got like a boys will be boys mentality in our world. And so the more people I talk to, the more parents I talk to, I'm like, whoa, if we do not educate our children and our teenagers and start monitoring their devices, their iPhones, their internet, we're gonna have a big problem on our hand by the time they're adults.
We have more strip clubs per capita than we have McDonald's in Tampa. That's pretty sad, isn't it? Yeah. And so just imagine, so if the adult entertainment world is such that it's okay for you to go in, you can watch someone, right? Sometimes you can feel them and touch them while they're performing, but most of the time that's an object in front of you that's performing, more than likely you are going to a strip club, or adult entertainment because of what you've watched on the internet. So more than likely you've been watching pornography on the internet, you want some of that, so you're going to go somewhere to get it. Since a lot of people don't know where else to go, they're going to go to a strip club because they think, strip club, prostitution, why not? So the culture of society today is that we are objects. We are not human beings, that we are now objects. And we have become objects through things like pornography, through the internet, through social media, through advertising. And so if you are an object, objects have no feelings, right? You can't hurt an object. You can't destruct an object. I don't want to sit here and say that every person that's in a strip club, whether it's a customer or it's a dancer, or a waitress or a hostess, is involved in exploitation or involved in sex trafficking, but there is a high percentage.
Polaris is the government place where you report any trafficking. I guess that's the government hotline. According to Polaris, Florida had hundreds of calls to its center in 2014 to report suspected incidents of human trafficking. The top 3 industries: hotel, motel, 2 online ads, of course prostitution and trafficking through the ads, restaurants. The adult entertainment industry didn't even make the top 10. So we're not responsible. These other things are responsible. In every aspect of everything in this country or in the world, there is an aspect of human trafficking. I don't care what it is. It could be a convenience store, It can be a hotel. It can be horticulture. It's not done by the owners, but the owners know it's happening and it's okay with them. And they have these shacks. They put some prostitutes in there. They traffic some people, and they line up the workers. That's what they do. They go in, they have sex, and and that's what this says. That's where the problems are, in those type of things, not in adult businesses. I'm a member of ACE, which is a membership of adult club executives. They have now had these sessions that we go to, the Homeland Security and the FBI, about human trafficking and sexual trafficking. We go. They're teaching us how to recognize human trafficking, but it's all common sense. And if you have a modicum of common sense and you care, all these things are just obvious. And we haven't had a human trafficking complaint at the Mons Venus. I spoke to the city council and said, here's how you do it. There are clubs out there that are causing problems. They have drugs in them. Here's how you do it. You send an undercover people in there. You make some contacts with drugs and stuff. You do it 3 different times or 4 different times. Then you charge them with RICO. You do it undercover. You charge them with RICO. You can take their property, but what you're doing is you're getting the offending person and not punishing people that aren't doing it. Otherwise, it's not fair at all to punish us for something other people are doing. It's not our industry, and those people aren't part of our organization. And if I knew about them, I would point them out because they're giving me a bad name. And we are not going to let one underage trafficked girl shut our business down. I have nothing to do with it, and I want them out of business.
For many people, strip clubs may seem, or just adult entertainment, pornography, strip clubs, whatever it may be, can seem innocent to many people, but it's absolutely the start for some individuals. If it was for me, I would close every strip club down or just stop all pornographies, but that's not realistic either. For me, I feel like there needs to be more of a barrier to the access that our kids are having to the pornography and access into these strip clubs. When I was about 3 years old, I was molested continuously for a couple years. And then when I was older, and my mom is still actively in addiction and an alcoholic, and she used to strip, and we lived with a pimp for many years. So through that, I was also sexually exploited and abused once I was around between the ages of 10 to 12. It's easy to just kind of become cold and say, well, it's not happening to me, so why does it matter? It's not happening to our family, so why does it matter? But it does. Even if, you become more aware, you open up your eyes, and even if it's a phone call or just listening to someone, it makes all the difference in the world. The most important part of recovery is getting to know yourself. A lot of times when you're going through those experiences, or you've been in that life for a long time, you kind of forget who you are. And it's easy to just follow other people and kind of camouflage amongst the rest. So when you actually take the time to find out who you are, I would say that's the pinnacle of recovery. You see the growth, you see the women come in, and you see them from the moment they decide to say, hey, I want help, to the moment that they leave, and you see that growth. So it's also daily with that as well, because you're part of it, you're part of their healing, you are just pretty much their guidance. And when you see that successfully, it's probably the greatest achievement, because you've helped one person, and that one person is now going to help someone else. So it's just an ongoing cycle.
I've been in financial services for over 15 years or so. Currently working in the AML space, the anti-money laundering space. Canvassing transactions for anomalous behavior. So, for example, if you have 5 or let's say 10 people with the same address, and they're all with different last names, and there is no real clear connection with each other. You can obviously tell a connection with a last name, or if you feel that there's a husband and wife, or husband and daughter, or things like that, that's connected. But when you have people with different names, different last names, same address, and you see 10 different people with the same address or phone number, that's something that is not, normal. But when we see multiple, maybe 10s, 20 transactions a month from people unrelated to a particular account holder, that's something that's a red flag. That's something that we want to look at.
I specifically deal with research and discovery and anti-money laundering programs. So we look for ways to find the activity and to make it as effective as possible to find it. Florida kind of has a mix of the perfect storm. We have the tourism, we have the business, we have the great weather, so things actually do function all year long. And those are all things that really attract the traffickers to bring their victims here, because they have so many different ways they can get revenue.
As far as the dollar amount, a lot of it goes unreported, but it's a very lucrative business, and that's the reason why this activity, continues. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to hit them in their pockets, and that's where we come in to kind of look at this activity, canvassing their transactional activity to identify it.
But the people that are making the money illegally, will they really go to work at 7-Eleven? No, they're gonna find other illegal ways to make money. So you'll solve one part of it, supposedly, but you'll have other problems. You'll have those people that are making money by prostituting their girls. They're not gonna go to work. They're gonna find other illegal way to get their money.
This has become a $35 billion industry. Average pimp can make $300,000 a year tax-free, and we're feeding into it. So we just have to stand up for our rights, stand up for our kids' rights, use our voices and just say, we're not gonna tolerate this anymore.
I think it takes success, it takes believers, it takes these women's stories to be heard, Now that women are getting better and healed and off drugs and they're able to come back and tell their stories, people are starting to listen to that. I think that people, you know, if they hear about a child being trafficked, they think, oh, that's so terrible. But when they hear about an adult being trafficked, they don't have that same empathy. But really, it's just a child that we missed.
And if someone you know is going through a similar struggle or going through, you know, is being trafficked, let someone know. Don't just throw it under the rug and turn the other cheek. Just let someone know, because that one little action might make the difference in that person's life. It might save them.